Everything is complicated.
Hey everyone, and welcome to The Index, brought to you by The Graph, where we talk with the entrepreneurs building the next wave of the internet. I'm your host, Alex Kehaya, and on today's episode of The Index, I'm excited to welcome my guest from the Secret Network, Ertemann, co-founder and head of dev relations at Secret Agency. We will take a deep dive and learn how the Secret Network powers Web3 privacy and the decentralized future. Thanks so much for being on the show. Would love to just start off with learning more about you. Tell me about yourself, your background, and kind of how you got to building Secret Network.
Yeah, of course. So, my name is Ertemann or Gijs, whatever you like most. I'm from the Netherlands. I started my crypto journey in February 2021, first as an investor and basically someone who's interested in technology. I have a background in physics and machine learning, so sort of translated that into learning more and more about mostly blockchain infrastructure or architecture, I would say. Really dove deep into the Cosmos ecosystem, IBC, and everything that comes with their sort of topology or their network infrastructure, how that came together, and then joined as a sort of community contributor at Secret Network in December 2021. And it's quickly grew out to a little bit more and a little bit more until I was spending more hours of my day doing stuff for Secret than for my real job or for everything I really basically had to do. And that eventually translated over to me helping with the founding of a new NPO in the ecosystem. It's called the Secret Agency. It's a DAO structure basically that allows multiple people to participate in sort of non-profit activities for the ecosystem, whether that be BD or developer relations or stuff like that. And what I do there most of the time is either work with all the people we have in our organization who work from a few hours to sometimes even full time, or work on the documentation, help applications built on the ecosystem, and then sort of learn about what Secret Network does, how it behaves, what you can build with it, what can't you build with it, and sort of explore that for all of these DApps and potential people to build on the chain, basically.
And tell me more about what Secret Network is. Like, what's the story behind Secret Network and how it got started, and what's the technology do?
Yeah, so Secret is the data privacy platform for Web3. Which means that it is a blockchain where you do not have only public smart contracts, but you have private smart contracts. So you have the possibility to create smart contracts with encrypted input, encrypted output, and encrypted state. So you can create a lot of applications that are simply not feasible on blockchain in the normal sense because it doesn't have any possibility to hide sensitive information, or it can't hide information from different parties, like in game states or whatever. And that's completely different on Secret because the entire blockchain state is private by default. It means there's no front running. That means there's no possibility to leak game states. There's no possibility to see what other people have as assets, whether that be NFTs or tokens. But all that is gated by access control of the user. So if the user does want to share details they already have, for their own wallet, they can, so with like viewing keys and permits or other solutions. So Secret Network started out in, it officially started out in 2020, but that's a long background dated to research in 2015 by the founder Guy Siskind. Pre-founded also as a project which was closely related to Ethereum as a layer 2, which is called Enigma, and then ended up landing in the Cosmos ecosystem and architecture there back in 2020 on mainnet as the first chain with private smart contracts, and still developing to date to increase the security of that chain, but also to explore new use cases for privacy as we all learn more day to day from what is actually interesting with that technology.
Interesting. And so, how does the tech work?
Yeah, so on the ground level, the Secret Network itself has a public and a private key, and the user also has a public and a private key. And this allows the user and the network to set up a sort of shared peer-to-peer encrypted stream. And for every user, the stream is different, but the network has the oversight of all the information that comes in. So all the network consists of currently 80 validators, but it can be increased or decreased dependent on governance parameters set by the chain. All these validators basically govern this data pool, and every validator itself only gets the encrypted input in, and then inside of their machine, they run a specific set of hardware, which is called trusted execution environments, or the sort of branded version Secret uses is called Intel SGX. And this is a form of encryption hardware, basically, that allows you to compute over encrypted data. So what all of these validators do, how the Cosmos architecture works basically with Tendermint is that every validator processes each transactions, and then they all hold the output against each other and say, okay, is your output the same as mine? And if more than 66% of us agree, then the next block is produced. So what happens on Secret is your data, which is encrypted with the shared secret which you have and the network, so nobody else can see it. It's just like ones and zeros. You send it to the network, and the network can combine it with all of this other data from the other participants, compute over it in this physically separate CPU, which no one can access, not even the validator can see. And then the output is encrypted again and committed to a public state. So the state is public in a sense, but all the data that's in there is private by default. So it's like encrypted by default. And seeing as you don't have the keys of that encrypted data, you can't decrypt it. And then the result is returned, and to see this encrypted result, the user can sort of sign something that says, hey, I'm the owner of this data. And that's called the viewing key or a permit. And if they sign this piece, then they can either see the data themselves or, for example, share it with someone else, or share the proof that they have this data with someone else. And in that way, you have both privacy for the user, but full auditability whenever that's necessary or interesting for a specific use case.
And what kind of use cases are we talking about? Like why do people care about having their data encrypted in this way on chain, and what are some examples of how secret networks being used today?
Yeah, so there are examples in different areas. I think most closely related to Web3 is maybe NFTs, which is where if you have an NFT on a public chain, the picture or whatever is part of the NFT, like the data that's inside of the NFT is public by default. So if I buy, I don't know, an NFT of a piece of art, and the art would be visible to everybody, it's just that I am officially the owner. Whether on Secret, the piece of art can be encrypted by default, but nobody can see it unless you decide to share it. But that, of course, then translates to use cases you wouldn't be able to do on public chain, where the NFT is an ID, for example, or the NFT is a license that you did something correctly in the real world, or that you achieved a certain certification on a commodity product or whatever. So that's a sort of clear example for Web3 people, but the second clear example in that sense is DeFi, where if you commit a swap on Secret, until the swap is executed, nobody would be able to see what exactly you're going to swap, because the data is encrypted when it's inputted to the chain. And that makes it so that every swap on Secret Network is automatically front-running resistant. Like, validators are not able to sandwich attack any of the DeFi activity on the chain. And same goes for liquidation points and like other interesting DeFi data that people use basically to take, to use basically to exploit certain users. And then when you look, I guess, beyond that, there's a lot more use cases you can think of, whether that be on-chain randomness, so like being the chain link but of Web3, but then on-chain instead of off-chain, or threshold wallets, which is something that's being developed currently, or storing seed phrases on chain as like a backup option. There's a whole application around changing the ENS space, so changing domain systems, as it's now like public domains aren't really possible because then you don't have the full ownership of the domain. So they make the full ownership private, just as they sell Web2, including like the hosting of the domains. You can actually buy .secret, for example. And there's a lot more interesting ideas you can think of. Many people use it for game state, for example, where if I play rock, paper, scissors with you, if I would do that, for example, on Ethereum, not the best chain to try it, maybe with $70 gas for every single transaction. But if I commit rock, and I wait one block for you to commit, then you would be able to see that I posted block, rock. So you would just choose paper and you would wait automatically. So how they do that in games on like Ethereum or other chains is they hide that data off chain until it's executed. But on Secret, you can just commit this to the state immediately, like fully decentralized, because nobody would be able to see anyway that you committed rock, paper, or scissors. So the other party has no way to cheat.
Interesting. And like the technology behind this is like use TEE, so trusted execution environments, which for people who don't know what that is, it's at the hardware layer. So it's actually running in the firmware. And like the big caveat with that is you have to trust the manufacturer of the hardware that they like actually installed the right thing and all that stuff. But you know, it is still like industry standard to use TEEs for certain applications. How familiar are you personally with like trusted execution environments and the hardware aspect of it?
So I would consider myself a cryptographer, but I'm relatively familiar with all the different solutions to at least the basic level, in the sense that I at least think I understand homomorphic encryption, CKPs, trust execution environments, and like multi-party computation on a level enough to sort of understand as to why certain solutions would work for some things but not for others. I think hardware is everybody always says this immediately, right, on a podcast or when they explore Secret Network. I think it's a valid thing you have to consider, but the reality is that it's probably the fastest and only sort of blockchain viable method we have currently to provide like Turing complete computation. And that's the goal of Secret Network. It's not to allow something like Monero or Zcash, which does transactional privacy, and they do that immensely well. We're not at all trying to compete with that functionality. We're trying to allow for a state machine that everyone has access to, which can do private computation for you. And the only real viable method to do that in like fast, or at least fast enough to have a decent blockchain currently, is to use trusted execution environments, because HME is like a gazillion times slower. Multi-party computation is very interesting, works for certain use cases, but has a lot of caveats you have to think about. Definitely an option worth exploring, which Secret Network did back in the early days as well, and is still doing as part of Secret 2.0. And as Renatus proves, are more so a scaling solution rather than a privacy solution when it comes to private computation. But yeah, so I guess that's my sort of background, and small caveat on how Secret does that.
Tell me more about Secret Agency DAO and how you guys got started. I mean, I think people, you know, first of all, DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And kind of the way I think about it is it's just a group of people that are coordinating for a singular purpose or for a shared purpose. It's not a company, but it's like a community. How would you describe what a DAO is to people who aren't familiar? And then what is, you know, your DAO focused on, and how does it work? Like, what's the governance look like, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So, what is a DAO for people who aren't familiar? A DAO, I think the closest resemblance we have in standard legal frameworks is sort of the board of a foundation. So don't consider the whole foundation behind it, but consider only the board. That's sort of how a DAO is supposed to work. As in, there an X amount of people that have control over something you can determine yourself, whether that be assets like dollars or crypto or whatever, or whether it be other choices like personnel or design choices or anything. You can all lay that out basically in a piece of paper you call the code of conduct, or the rules basically of the foundation, or of the sort of the DAO. And then every member has an assigned voting rights. And in most DAOs, this is like equal. So every member has an equal voting right, but in theory, you could design it however you want to. So you could have 4 people that are on top, and then people underneath have less voting power, or they're only able to decide over certain things. And this is all, normally it's part of all of a smart contract, but it doesn't necessarily have to be part of a smart contract. It's more so a construct or legal construct to think about organizations in a more flat way instead of in a hierarchical way of thinking. So that's, I guess, my quick explainer of DAOs in general. That's specifically the Secret Agency DAO. We are actually an officially registered company, not necessarily just a smart contract, or where we aren't even a smart contract. We're actually a multisig. The DAO currently consists of 4 people. So those are 4 of the founders. 4 or usually 6 founders. 4 remain to this day. The other 2 are not part of it anymore. And the DAO was sort of created out of I wouldn't call necessity, but there used to be something on Secret Network which were called committees. It was the idea that the community pool, which is a standard thing in Cosmos ecosystem, where the chain itself has like assets it can use. So it has secret in a contract, or not actually in a contract, it's in a module inside of the chain. And you can commit governance proposals, and every secret taker can vote on it. And then if the secret taker votes yes, or like a majority votes yes, then they can spend money on certain stuff. And that's how committees used to work. So there were like 2 or 4 people, and they'd say, "Hey, I'm going to do this work for the chain. Can I get money for it?" But it wasn't super efficient, and at a certain point, it also started to have like a lot of overhead, where the community didn't have enough oversight over what the committees were actually doing. So they sort of canceled that funding completely as like a community vote, saying, "Okay, hey, we no longer stand for how this works, but we do somehow want to see the work of at least some of these contributors continue." And that's where 3 of those committees combined with the help of the Secret Foundation, sticked around. And 5 months later, a lot changed about the entire work they were doing. So moved a lot away from socials and marketing and stuff like that, but took over some sort of core parts of the network, which were a little bit in between what the foundation was doing and what the core development group was doing. And mostly that's today, that's business development and developer relations, which are two core verticals we work on. So I'm part of the devrel team, or at least set that up over the past months. It was a lot of work, but we're happy. We're doing a good job, I think, at least. And then some of my co-founders are more in the BD department, but of course we work a lot together.
And how is it funded? Like, how do you guys make a living? It's just funded from the foundation, or how do you guys generate revenue? What's the deal there?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not always as certain as we would hope. The ecosystem, at first, we were funded as like a sort of partial thing by the foundation. The Secret Foundation funded us directly. And so we had the org set up and everything basically structured in a way where we cut out a lot of the, not necessarily people, but a lot of verticals that maybe not needed or like duplicated and stuff like that. We slimmed down to like a core organization. And then a lot of stuff happened in Secret Network over the past year, especially in governance, where we're looking to set up a new foundation as a whole, which would have both the agency and the current foundation under it. So those entities would sort of disappear, and it would be a new foundation. And in that transition process, we were no longer. It was no longer possible for us to receive money directly from the current foundation. So we actually received money from a tax module, which exists on Secret Network, a sort of staking tax for a few months. We no longer get that, but that's fine because it's enough to carry us over for roughly another 2 to 3 months. And by then, we hope that for the wider ecosystem as a whole, there will be a new foundation or like new nonprofit set up with a new board and a new CEO or like sort of leader of the MPO that will probably over time at least not necessarily sort of eat up our organization, but at least directly fund it, and also directly fund some of the other participants who are still working at Secret Foundation. So how are we funded? Sort of community tax over long term. Yeah.
Why is there this gap between when there's like, why isn't there a foundation in place? What's the cause of like all the shuffling of different orgs and stuff and their structure? I'm just curious.
It's mostly community governance. Like Secret has existed for quite a long while. It has a community dating back to like 2017 and earlier. Mm-hmm. So there were choices made back then. So the core development organization is sort of the biggest organization, I would say, in Secret. They are sort of the foundation, but not necessarily. So it's a bit different from like newer ecosystems, which set up with the foundation initially, and then the core development team is separate. Here it's more so the core development team are the founders, and then the foundation was set up later on. And this foundation was sort of not really possible to be set up as an MPO. So it was a private company, and over time the community grew more and more distrust basically with that architecture, and sort of decided that it's better for the future of the network at least to halt that organization, or at least they keep doing their work, but any progress when it comes to funding and stuff is halted until a sort of new organization is set up that can better encompass the entire ecosystem. So the entire marketing department, BD department, devrel, everything that's sort of next to core development. So it's it's basically something that came from the community asking more transparency and more direct input into how that's set up. So it's it's basically we're leaving behind older architectures that were normal back in 2017, but are definitely not as not the standard anymore today. So it's as a whole network, it's good we're moving to the newest form of doing that.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there were definitely a couple of privacy-related projects that popped up in 2016, 2017. I used to actually work at Orchid, which is a decentralized VPN product. And then there's Oasis, which uses trusted execution environments as well to bring privacy layer, although I'm not sure. I haven't talked to those guys in a while, so I'm not sure what they're up to these days. And I feel like walk me through the kind of traction Secret Network has, like the different use cases, and then are there lots of users using that technology yet? Or is it being used in DeFi? Or is it still kind of in development and searching for product market fit? Do you feel like the network's found product market fit for some specific use case?
I would say yes. I think whether it has the recognition or adoption it deserves, maybe no. I think as a network as a whole, we found some clear use cases back in 2021. We grew to maybe like the 80th largest chain or something. Like Secret Network was relatively large back then. The whole Cosmos ecosystem basically. That came with NFTs created by Tarantino, like new interesting DeFi products with like privacy enhancing features. But over the past bear market, basically like a lot of that has disappeared, like the direct value. But a lot of new and very cool products have appeared, in my opinion. So there are more products and more, I would say, interesting tools and development features right now than there were 2 years ago. The core development team has, I would say, at least never been more proactive. I think the biggest fit we have, or what was created basically over the past 6 months, it's called privacy as a service. And it is the idea that you wouldn't necessarily have to build your product on Secret in order to have privacy features for your product. So what that comes down to is like the contracts on Secret, so the Secret contracts written in Rust are IBC compatible with any other Cosmos chain that has it as well. So you get interoperable contracts. So you can call Secret contracts from another chain or the reverse, and that allows you to do very cool, nifty privacy features. And then last month, we were partnered with Axelar back like 6 or 7 months ago. Axelar is a bridging chain basically to Ethereum. And they finished their general message passing bridge as well last month. So that now allows you to do basically the same thing for Ethereum or any EVM chain for that matter. So you already have a few mainnet applications that use this. So one is on Polygon, there's one on Ethereum, and they're basically utilizing Secret to enhance their product with the privacy. And I think that's probably the best product market fit we would have hoped for. And the goal back when Secret moved to Cosmos and said, okay, hey, we are not just a privacy chain or like privacy layer 2 on Ethereum, but we are a core base layer privacy chain that any other network for that matter could use to enhance their product. And I really think that vision at least is coming to life together with whatever is being built on the chain, natively on the chain anyway, which is multiple DeFi products and all of these other tooling that's part of the ecosystem.
Well, with you kind of heading up devrel for the ecosystem, you must be seeing like who the builders are in the bear market and kind of what things they're building. And so that's, I found that during bear markets, that's really exciting to see what people are building and oftentimes that gears you up for the next cycle when there is hopefully product market fit, right? So what are some examples of stuff you're seeing built and like kind of what are the kind of common things that you're doing to help people in your role in devrel?
Yeah, so what core products that I think are cool or like they are being built is there are some very nifty sort of Web2-esque products. So it's like there was a sort of Spotify version that's completely decentralized, but you like have access with like standard credit card payments or whatever. But it stores all the encrypted songs and the whole access control process on Secret. There are multiple mobile wallets, like fully launched, both desktop. So they have both desktop, mobile integration, everything in a single wallet. Very much sort of Secret focused. Some also have debit cards or like direct, so you can load it up with Secret and then pay with your card directly. And I think that really allows for a better adoption. Basically, I would say bull market maybe, or last year, I guess there were a lot of problems with the whole of the Cosmos ecosystem basically only having one real wallet and all relying on the development of them. And there were a lot of new chains, so all their chains had problems getting new features. And now we have like these multiple of these fully supported secret network wallets, basically that allow you to do a lot of cool stuff with privacy enhancing features. Yeah, there are a lot of other projects I'm very excited about. There's like a sort of OnlyFans copy, which is doing this whole access control program, and then the NFT content encrypted somewhere else. So you can do this not safe for work content without just publicly putting everybody's picture on on the public state. A lot of gaming applications coming, betting, and then what I'm doing as like okay, one thing I wanted to mention, by the way, that's an application is what just quick shout out to like the DeFi apps. Basically, last month we had a hackathon. I think it was like the biggest effort our devrel department at least put out in the past months. So we had an online hackathon which was focused on layer 2 DeFi or like DeFi with already existing base primitives. There's this cool project Shade, which has a stable coin that's not pegged to the US dollar, but it's pegged to a basket of currencies. So it sort of outpaces inflation. It has a decentralized stable similar to the DAI model, basically. There's a balancer DEX, lending protocol, and everything, basically. But anyway, what I do as a devrel to help these DApps, it's there's no one answer, I would say. I think what I've seen so far, at least, with applications or people building on the chain is that connections are the hardest. And so that's what I really try to do is most of my job, in my opinion, is relation management, not necessarily directly helping people. So it's more so about making sure they are heard and all their feature requests and everything that they need is put towards the correct party and the other way around. That information about upgrades and features that are coming are messaged through instead of being very direct on a call every week to help them with very specific issues. I mean, most of that can be figured out, or if there are specific development questions that can be asked, and we can find someone to help them. But I think the most important with all of these DApps is to make sure that when there is something very important, they are heard or they have access to whatever party they need that can directly help them. So I think that has been the biggest breakthrough for us as an ecosystem as a whole in the past year, where we've grown a lot. Is like, okay, yes, we are the decentralized ecosystem, but no, we cannot just let everyone build and not help them directly. There needs to be access for them directly to the foundation, directly to the core development team, directly to anyone basically that not necessarily even decides, but knows a lot about these specific development efforts, about specific verticals and stuff like that. So with that, we have a sort of new way of bringing VC money into the chain. So new DApps that come by, they don't necessarily even have to get grants, but we have this large pool of investors they can get connected to find money for their project, or they can connect to me to be part of the hackathon, for example. Like, we'll be connected to audit companies, and like everything like that is sort of figured out in a way where I think at least communication has sort of become more efficient, at least over the past years, even though it's a decentralized organization, which is interesting.
That makes sense. I was just saying, I'm curious, like, so we're getting to the top of the show here, and I always ask the same question to everybody. You know, what have I not asked you that I should have asked or that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's always a lot to talk about in general. I think maybe the roadmap is always something people are interested in, but we already slightly covered that, right, with privacy as a service and Secret 2.0, which are most of the efforts Secret is putting out there, which is like cryptographic enhancing of a lot of the features we have and sort of expanding that and then tailoring into new use cases, with mostly them being on other chains, whether this be account abstraction with like MPC wallets or walletless experiences or on-chain randomness or private voting. There are a lot of very simple but very necessary things for other ecosystems that we can provide. So yeah, I think we've covered most of it at least.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time and thanks for coming on the show. It'll be fun to keep watching how the Secret Network and your DAO, the Secret Agency DAO, progress through this bear market. And privacy is I think super important, and I think it's something that we all take for granted, at least in the Web2 space. So I love having people on the show that are working on privacy related solutions. Where can people come and follow what's going on for the Secret Network and for Secret Agency? Where should they go find you?
Yeah, so feel free to go to Twitter. I have an account there. I've been a little bit silent over the past months because I feel like Twitter shadow banned me, but you can find me on @Ertemann, which is the name you see probably on screen. And then as an account as a whole, as a network, we have a Twitter account as well. It's called Secret Network directly. Post a lot there. I'll be in Amsterdam for an event this week, but I'll also be in Prague in June for the blockchain week there, and then in July Paris, the ECC conference. So if you're in Europe by any chance,
ECC is awesome.
Feel free to hop by.
Conference. Yeah, ECC is awesome. So if you're listening and you haven't been, and I suggest you go and check it out. It's one of my favorite conferences. That one in East Denver. And then it's for those of you who are listening and not looking at the video, it's Ertemann is Ertemann's name. So @Ertemann on Twitter. Again, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, no problem. I'd say anyone who's interested, feel free to shoot us a question or come by in the Discord. We're happy to help. If you're a developer as well, there are some interesting things happening with the hackathon just closing. We'll do a new one hopefully in a few months, and we have with monthly workshops and stuff like that for you just to get started with using Rust and other languages, then maybe Solidity. So yeah, hope to see you there, and thank you very much for hosting.
Awesome.